Hi, this is Beersborn. In today's video, we're going to talk about items. If we think about our core loop of gameplay, the objective is what our player is trying to accomplish. The obstacle is the challenge that gets in the way of them accomplishing their objective. In our case, it's enemies that they have to defeat. The reward is what they are given when they defeat the enemies to bring them closer to the objective. This is where the items come into play. We're going to create items that help our player when they overcome an obstacle to get closer to accomplishing their objective. We're going to put a couple items in our game. The one that we're going to start with today is like a currency. Think like money or some kind of resource that drops when they defeat an enemy. And our player can collect those and then use them to maybe upgrade their abilities or buy new items or something like that. Now to start with, we want to add the object into our game. I'm starting in layout 1. I want to make sure I'm on the layer 0 where all of our sprites and everything are. And I'm going to insert a new object. It's going to be a sprite. And name it whatever makes sense to you. The economy item, the currency item that I'm making is a coin. So I'm just going to call it coin. But you can name it whatever makes sense for your item. I'm going to click anywhere. And I'm going to find the sprite that I exported. Here's mine. It's just a simple red coin. I put an animation in mine. If yours has an animation, you might want to adjust the speed of your animation. You might want to make it loop, so it plays on loop. So this little spinning coin. Great. There's my coin. Now my coin's way too big, right? I want to make it smaller. So I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. You want the items to be big enough for the player to see easily on the screen, so don't make it too small. But you also don't want it to dominate the space. So find a size that looks good. Excellent. Now, what I want to do is create a system so that when my player touches the coin, they collect it. So I'm going to go to my core event sheet. The reason why I'm putting in the core event sheet is because I want this to be true for all my levels. So I don't want to put it in my event sheet 1 or event sheet 2. This is going to go in the core event sheet. Let's add an event. Let's go to our player. And let's do on collision with another object. When it collides with your item, coin, then we can have a couple things happen. First, we want the item to disappear. If our player is collecting it, it should no longer be on the map, right? So I'm going to add an action, go to the item, and go to destroy. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to make some kind of variable that counts how many of these coins my player has collected. I would make a global variable for this because you want to keep your coins from level to level. If we do an instance variable, it gets reset at the end of every level, but a global variable stays consistent. So I'm going to go to add global variable. I'm going to call mine coin count. You can call it something different as long as you understand what it means. The type is a number and the initial value 0. Good. So now I have this global variable that's going to keep track of how many coins I've collected. Every time my player collides with a coin, let's add an action. Because it's a global variable, it's going to be under the system. And we're going to go to the global variables section, add to. Let's add to our coin count a value of 1. Good. Now if I hit play, I have the coin sitting in my space, and I can run my player into it, I collect the coin. But there's nothing on the screen which tells me how many coins I've collected. So let's add something to the HUD. Right now our HUD is just the health bar, but it'll be helpful to have a little counter that shows how many coins we have there as well. So let's go to our level 1, and let's go to the HUD layer. Now it's important to put this on the HUD layer for 2 reasons. One is that our HUD is a global layer, which means that it'll automatically put it into the HUD in level 2 and all future levels also. The other thing is, if you remember, we set the parallax for the HUD layer to 0% by 0%, which means that it always stays on the same part of the screen. So if you put this on the wrong layer, it's not going to work right. So let's make sure we're on HUD. I'm going to insert a new object, and this time I'm going to put in a text. I'm going to call this text coin counter. Hit insert. And remember, the text always comes in very small and black. We can make adjustments to it on this left side menu by changing things like the size. Let's find a good size. I'm going to try 30. We can stretch out our window. Let's find a good color. Now, I would recommend choosing a color that's similar to whatever your item's color is. Like, for example, my coins are red, so I want to have red text so it communicates better to the player that this is counting those specific items. What you can do actually is click that little eyedropper and move your mouse over the object, pick up the same exact color. Now, the other thing we can do is we can set our font and we can place it exactly where we want it to be. Now, when you place this, you can put it wherever you want. I'm going to put mine just right underneath the health bar. You could put it centered, you could put it on the left side. The only thing I'd point out is this dotted line, this rectangle that's up in the top left of your layout, that represents where the screen is. So when we place stuff on our HUD, if you wanted it to be on the right edge, you wouldn't put it all the way over here on the right edge of your layout. You would actually just put it on the right edge of this dotted line rectangle. But I think it looks better if it's right underneath the health bar. Now, the last thing I'm going to do for this is I'm going to change the word from text to coins. It doesn't actually matter because we're going to update this to constantly be the number of coins we have, so it doesn't actually ever read coins, but it's helpful for me when I'm looking at the editor here that I can say, like, okay, that number is coins. So I'd recommend changing that to whatever this is counting. Great. Now let's go back over to our core event sheet. We're going to add a new event. We're going to go to System, and we're going to go to every tick. What I'm going to make is an action that updates this coin text to whatever my coin count global variable is. So every tick means every fraction of a second. We can add an action, go to our coin counter text, and we're going to go down to the bottom where it says set text. Set text is where you make it say whatever you want it to say. And if I type in the word coin count, the name of our global variable, it should pop up with a little green earth next to it, representing it's a global variable. Notice I didn't put the quotation marks around it. You don't want quotation marks on this, just the name of your global variable. Click Done. Now, every fraction of a second, it updates the coin counter text to read whatever the coin count is. Now let's try it out. You should have a 0 here to start with, and if I pick up the coin, it becomes a 1. Now, the only thing that I think is maybe not great is that as a player, I still might not know what that number is referring to. It's common to put a little symbol next to the counter to show what that's actually counting. I'm going to put a little tiny coin up there. Now, we're going to make a new object to be this little symbol for the HUD. We don't want to use one of these already existing coins. We're going to make a new little coin for it. We can use the same sprite, but we want to make a new object. So I'm going to make sure I'm on my HUD. I'm going to right-click, insert new object, go to sprite, and I'm going to call this HUD coin. That way I know it's the coin for the HUD. I would recommend doing the same. Basically everything that I end up putting on the HUD, I'll name it like HUD whatever. It's easy to keep track of that way. Let's insert it, and I'm going to use the same sprite that I used for my other object here. Now mine is animated. I'm going to take the animation out because on the HUD I feel like it'd be distracting to have a little spinning coin up there, so I'm just going to keep it static. I'm going to shrink it down and line it up where I want it to be. Now let's see how it works. I'm going to drop a couple more coins in here. Let's press play. And I can collect coins. Oh, notice how this coin is moving as my player moves? The reason for that is because I accidentally put it on the HUD. If you ever have an object that moves with the camera in this way, check to make sure it's on the right layer. I think some of these I accidentally put on the HUD layer. You can change that pretty easy. Just click on it, and over here where it says layer, change it to layer 0. Cool, my counter works. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make it so whenever you defeat an enemy, they'll drop that coin. To do that, we're going to go over to the core event sheet. We're going to add a new event. We're going to go to our first enemy. Let's go to enemy 1. And we're going to go to on destroyed because we want this to happen when our enemy is defeated. So find on destroyed. And when our enemy is on destroyed, we're going to add an action, go to enemy 1, and we're going to spawn another object. The object we'll spawn is our item. Now for the layer here, by default it's layer 0. If you look in your layer window, it numbers all the layers. So layer 0 is technically our background. What we want to do is put this on layer 0, the name layer 0, which is kind of confusing. I feel like maybe we can rename that layer, but we'll just stick with it for now. What I'd recommend doing is typing in a quotation mark, and it brings up a whole list of all your layers. Let's put it on layer 0. If you want to put in an image point to make it drop out of a specific part of your enemy, you could do that. But if you keep it as 0, it'll just appear from the center of your enemy, which works pretty good too. So notice I defeated my enemy, the death animation plays, and it drops a coin. Now on mine, I don't really like that the coin is in front of my death animation, right? It kind of covers up the death animation. What I'm going to do is make it so that when the coin is created, it's behind the death animation. So you don't have to do this. It's really just a matter of preference. But I'm going to add an event that says coin on created. I'm going to add an action. You can go to the coin, and we're going to scroll down to the bottom here where there's a Z order section. If I click on move to bottom, it'll put it at the bottom behind everything else in that layer. So that way when the coin is created, it'll be behind the death animation. I think that looks a little bit better. Again, you don't have to do that, but I prefer it. Cool. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to take this event and we're going to do the same thing for the other enemies too. So I'm going to add a new event. I'm going to go to enemy 2. I'm going to go to on destroyed and add action. Enemy 2. Spawn another object. And it'll spawn a coin on layer 0. Let's do the same thing for enemy 3 too. Add event, go to enemy 3, on destroyed, enemy 3, spawn another object, coin. Excellent. We'll leave it there today. In our next video, we'll make a system so that it doesn't always drop a coin. It'll have a certain percentage chance of dropping a coin or maybe a different item, but we'll do that in the next video. Thanks for joining.